You know, for thousands of years, especially in Western culture, we've had this kind of holy trinity of universals that we've held pretty much in most places with most people in high esteem, these universal transcendentals of truth, goodness, and beauty. I think of them as three branches kind of the tree of life. Plato articulated these a while back. If you haven't noticed, in the day of postmodernity, we're kind of living in some divided days, some divided times, right? In the age of Trump, of fake news, of Facebook facades, you know, that we get to hide behind. We can insulate ourselves with, you know, a few people that agree with our worldview. And if anyone dares to differ, we can beat them with the hammer of our version of truth and goodness. And what it's done, among a lot of other things, it's called into question these universal ideas. It seems like truth and goodness especially are kind of under attack. In a lot of ways, they feel kind of on the ropes, if you will. Van Gogh was an artist. I also believe that he was a storyteller, kind of like Jesus. I actually don't believe in the art of storytelling. I believe that art is storytelling, and that we join God when, the God that introduced himself as an artist and an architect when he said in the beginning he created, that we have the opportunity to join him in that ongoing work. One of my new heroes, and I'm gonna go on a limb, try to say his name here, Solzhenitsyn, changed his country, changed his world through the power of words. A poet, a writer. He riffed off of the story of the sower of the seeds. And the idea that if truth and good were planted, they tend to sprout up pretty straight, pretty linear. It also makes them pretty easy targets to be crushed, to be trimmed, amputated. But at the end of the day, beauty, because of its irregular nonlinearity, because of its organic, whimsical flow, it will, at the end of the day, rise up to reach the sun. That beauty will do the heavy lifting. That actually beauty will save the world. It sounds abstract. There's a lot of good thinkers that actually are coming to this realization, again, in divided days, that if you find the things that hold us in common. I can go to a U2 concert. These guys are certifiable senior citizens at this point and have 100,000 people, left wing, right wing, multi-generation, admittedly growing older by the year on average, unified with this idea of changing the world. You can go to some of the top human magnets on the planet, and this goes to kind of what I do for a living, which is one aspect of architecture, of art and storytelling. We call it spatial storytelling. At Disney, we call it Imagineering. Some would call it architecture. Like a lot of Christian art, it got hijacked a few years ago. Christian art has tried to dumb down art around the idea of functionalism. It has to have a purpose, right? If you're gonna do, Show taught me that if you wanna do Christian music, you've gotta package it up in a way that Christian soccer moms don't have to think about it, and they can buy, go to the Christian music store and buy that record for their kids because it'll be sanitized and safe. If we're doing a Christian movie, it's got to have a function, whether it's to save marriage. It could be a good function of truth and goodness, but it's got to have a function. It's got to save marriages. It's got to instill a better, accurate worldview. Again, we're trying to shore up truth and goodness. We're not understanding that beauty needs to be beauty for its own sake. Same thing happened. The seeds of destruction of architecture as an art happened with the roots of modernism, with this idea that form follows function, less is more. Buildings are machines, people are cogs in a machine. That's the reason that we have these Soviet housing blocks, the reason that we had projects in America that end up just being disasters, dividing people rather than connecting people. My take on this is that form follows fiction, that spaces tell stories, just like Winston Churchill said so famously, that we shape our buildings and forever after they shape us. Great spaces, great stories, great art gives us an opportunity to join God, to reflect his image in that ongoing work of restoring, reconnecting that broken vertical and horizontal shalom, that peace that connects us with each other horizontally, vertically with the Creator and with creation. There was a pretty good artist, actually a so-so artist, great storyteller in the 20th century named Walt Disney. I've learned when I'm talking to millennials, I have to remind them that Disney was a dude. It's not just some corporate logo, corporate brand. But what this dude was able to do was create a new collective art form, again, that we call spatial storytelling or Imagineering. He was able to redeem this impoverished childhood, living in this dusty railroad stop farm town in the Midwestern US. And actually, through the power of artists and artisans and architects, create this quintessential Main Street USA. Just like Van Gogh kind of created a new interpretation of irises, little pieces of God's creation. He kind of owns irises, one of the most expensive paintings ever sold. Walt Disney was able to restore this world as it could and should be with this image of Main Street that now is really the spiritual soul and heart of inviting the world to step into his childhood. Not just in the US, but in Europe, mainland China, Shanghai. These have become the top human magnets on the planet. I joined the Walt Disney Company in 1990, start of a 10-year journey that allowed me to turn 1,100 acres in the city of Anaheim, restore one of the largest surface asphalt parking lots in the world, and actually unpave the parking lot and put up Paradise, to actually put up a national park, a space that allows people to step into the story of the unique people, place, and the sense of place of the Golden State, centered around this Grizzly Peak mountain. We let people spend the night in a national park lodge, Grand Californian Hotel, that actually sits in the magic, lets you go to sleep, enter REM, and wake up, and you're still immersed in that immersive environment. We've been able to partner with Paolo Accolini, a friend that happens to own the Vancouver Canucks and the Rogers Arena in Vancouver. And rather than being a black hole in the city when it's not game night, cast this vision of wrapping the stadium 360, with this idea of play 365 and wrapping the stadium 360 degrees, where you take a ski lift to the roof and ski down an artificial slope, where you can climb, engage, and recreate. We've had the chance to allow people, including my daughter, by the way, this is what she wanted for Christmas, to step into worlds that previously only existed in words. The Wizarding World of Harry Potter, we were actually able to fabricate the Hogwarts Express that you previously only read about. Jim Palmer is someone that really taught me a lot, that art is not an option. He founded the Orange County Rescue Mission, probably one of the most internationally recognized quality solutions for homelessness in the world. But it's infilled with millions of dollars of art that's been donated. This is actually the artist that created the entry gate. The idea that you can't just get her done with the trinity of budget, good, fast, and cheap. You've got to aim higher. You've got to instill people with the sense of worth that God has, to give them a sense that they are beloved sons and daughters. It is invaluable. Partnered with them on restoration roasters. Did a village for victims of child sex trafficking with some of the top architects from the biggest firms and the best firms in the world. In Detroit, we used a language of shipping containers to restore an abandoned community center that looked like a scene from The Walking Dead. And with Mike Goldsworthy in the room here in Long Beach, we restored an abandoned street and created parklets out of empty parking spaces. And then I got to design this chapel at my suburban, multi-useless gymatorium, suburban megachurch country club campus. We were actually able to create a sacred space that I call Lori's Chapel of Love, where I got to design it and then get hitched in it to my beautiful bride, Lori. And we're currently designing an alabaster jar. That beautiful, simple analogy that beauty, even though it may not be practical, may not be functional, it may not have an ROI, through permeable concrete, through alabaster, you can create spaces again that are sacred, that connect people horizontally and vertically. I'm gonna leave you with one case study of a church that was pretty much empty. The church used to be the patron of the arts. And they are still some of the top attractions, but by using and fusing the gift of technology and creativity, there's different ways of telling stories and creating beauty. So thanks a lot.